Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You're sitting quietly, maybe in your room, maybe outside under a soft sky, and the world around you seems to slow down. You begin to notice small things, the rhythm of your breath, the hum of life all around you, and that subtle awareness within you that is simply watching. That awareness, the silent witness behind every thought, every feeling, every action, is what this entire journey is about. We live our lives chasing events, experiences, and goals, believing that reality happens to us. But what if the truth is far deeper, that reality happens through us, responding to the consciousness that observes it? What if your attention isn't just a passive lens, but the very brush that paints the universe you experience? For centuries, mystics, philosophers, and now even scientists have whispered the same secret in different words. Your perception doesn't just interpret the world, it creates it. The moment you observe, you participate. The act of looking changes what you see. This is the essence of the observer effect, not as a cold scientific principle, but as a living, breathing truth within your own consciousness. Think about it. How many times have you felt stuck in a repeating pattern? The same fears, the same types of people, the same emotional loops. It's as though life is mirroring your inner world, echoing your state of being back to you. That's not a coincidence. The universe, in its mysterious precision, reflects the frequency of the observer, you. The more you observe through the eyes of fear, lack, and limitation, the more your outer world rearranges itself to match that vision. But the moment you shift your inner lens, even slightly, everything begins to change. This realization can feel unsettling at first. If observation creates, then who is observing? Who is this you that has such immense power over the fabric of reality? The answer isn't found in the mind or the ego, but in the quiet awareness beneath them. That part of you that has always been watching, since childhood through every success and heartbreak, unchanged and eternal. That's the real you. The rest, your thoughts, emotions, roles, are expressions flowing through that awareness, not the awareness itself. There's a reason ancient spiritual traditions emphasized the art of witnessing. To know thyself was not just a call for introspection, but a reminder that self-observation is creation. When you step back and watch your mind without judgment, you begin to reclaim your creative power. You stop being lost in the movie and start realizing, you are the projector. Now imagine life as a quantum canvas, a sea of infinite possibilities, vibrating with potential. Each thought, each emotion, each belief acts as a command, telling that canvas what to become. The observer effect tells us that even at the smallest level, particles behave differently when watched. They respond to attention. So, if the universe responds to observation, then your awareness is not passive. It's the sculptor of your experience. But this isn't about blame or control, it's about awakening. Because for too long, we've been taught that we are victims of circumstance, separate from the intelligence that moves galaxies. Yet deep down, something in you knows that's not the whole story. There's a quiet recognition that maybe, just maybe, the same consciousness that creates stars is the same consciousness looking through your eyes. As you start to understand this, something within begins to soften. You no longer see life as random. The moments of synchronicity, the déjà vu, the sudden shifts in energy, they all start to make sense. You begin to sense that there's a dance happening between your inner world and the outer one, a delicate feedback loop of awareness and manifestation. This is the beginning of true empowerment, not the kind that comes from forcing outcomes, but the kind that flows from realizing your role as the observer. You begin to understand that by changing the way you see, you change what you see. And in that single shift, from identification with thoughts to awareness of thoughts, reality itself bends. So as we step into this journey together, hold on to one question like a sacred thread. Who is the one watching? Let that question linger in the background of your awareness as we explore both science and spirit, because by the end, you might discover that the observer you've been searching for has been quietly here all along, behind your eyes, waiting for you to notice. This is not just a concept to be understood. It's an experience waiting to be felt, the realization that everything changes the moment you begin to see differently. The old self, trapped in patterns, starts to dissolve. The new self, the awakened observer, begins to emerge. And from that space, life itself starts to rearrange into something extraordinary. When we hear the term observer effect, it sounds like something that belongs in a science textbook, distant, technical, and hard to connect with. But behind the equations and experiments lies something almost mystical, a clue to how consciousness interacts with the fabric of reality itself. To understand this, let's take a journey back to one of the most puzzling discoveries in modern physics, the double-slit experiment. In the early 1900s, scientists were trying to understand the true nature of light and matter. Were they waves? Were they particles? To find out, they fired tiny particles, electrons, through a barrier with two slits. Behind the barrier was a screen that would capture the pattern of whatever passed through. If the electrons behaved like solid little balls, they should have made two bands on the screen, matching the two slits. But when no one was watching, when there was no observer, something unbelievable happened. The electrons created an interference pattern as if they were waves overlapping each other. It was as though each electron had passed through both slits at once. Yet, when scientists decided to watch what was happening, to measure which slit each electron went through, the interference pattern disappeared. The electrons behaved like solid particles again. Simply by observing, they had changed reality's behavior. The act of looking transformed the outcome. That's the moment the universe whispered a secret. Reality is not fixed, it's responsive. At first, scientists tried to explain this logically. They thought maybe their instruments interfered somehow, or that there was a mechanical cause. But as experiments became more precise, it became clear that it wasn't the tools, it was the observation itself that mattered. In other words, reality doesn't decide what form to take until it's being observed. This is where physics touches the threshold of spirituality. Because if observation changes the physical world at the quantum level, then what does it mean for us, the observers of our own lives? Could our thoughts, beliefs, and attention influence not just our emotions but the actual structure of reality around us? To most scientists, the observer effect was a problem, something strange that didn't fit the rules of classical physics. But to mystics, monks, and spiritual seekers, it was confirmation of what had been known for thousands of years. Consciousness is primary. The observer and the observed are not separate. Let's slow down here and reflect. When you look at the night sky, those stars existed long before you. But the moment you gaze at them, something changes, not in the stars but in you. Awareness awakens, connection forms, and your perception creates meaning. The same light that traveled millions of years through space meets your eyes and becomes experience. Without that observation, it remains just potential, a wave of photons with no story. In the same way, your life is filled with infinite potential realities, but only those that you observe, focus on, feel into, give energy to, solidify into your lived experience. This doesn't mean you magically create everything in your life with a single thought. It means your relationship with reality determines how it responds. The universe behaves like a mirror. When you observe through fear, you collapse reality into fearful events. When you observe through gratitude, you collapse it into harmony. The underlying quantum field doesn't judge, it reflects. Imagine for a moment that everything around you, your job, your relationships, your opportunities, are like waves on the ocean of potential. They exist, but in an undefined state. The moment your awareness lands on one of those possibilities, it begins to take form. That's why spiritual teachers throughout history emphasized focus and attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. It's not just poetic, it's physics. The double-slit experiment, in essence, shows us that reality is participatory. We are not spectators in a cosmic play. We are co-creators, shaping each moment with our perception. But because we've been conditioned to believe that we are separate from the world, we forget this truth. We assume things happen randomly, that we're just reacting to circumstances. Yet quantum physics reminds us, the observer and the observed are entangled. Einstein once said, reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. He struggled with the idea that the universe might depend on consciousness to exist. But today, more and more scientists and philosophers are revisiting that question, not from superstition but from evidence. Every discovery in quantum theory points back to the same core mystery. Awareness and matter are intertwined in ways we don't yet fully understand. And when we translate that mystery into human experience, we arrive at something deeply spiritual. Your awareness has creative power. Think about how you feel when you're being watched. Even if you don't see the observer, your behavior changes slightly. You become more conscious of yourself, more deliberate. Now imagine that the universe behaves the same way, aware of being aware. The moment you bring mindful attention to any aspect of your life, whether it's healing, abundance, or love, that energy reorganizes itself to reflect that awareness. This is not wishful thinking. It's a reminder that your consciousness is not trapped inside your brain. It extends outward, interacting with the very field of existence itself. Ancient mystics called it the fabric of creation, while modern physicists call it the quantum field. Different words, same truth. So, when you observe your reality, you're not simply looking at it, you're influencing it. When you judge yourself harshly, the field mirrors limitation. When you watch yourself with compassion and curiosity, the field mirrors expansion. The observer's intention determines the outcome. And this leads to a profound realization. The more consciously you observe, the more harmoniously the universe responds. This is why meditation, mindfulness, and conscious awareness are not just spiritual luxuries, they're the mechanisms through which you begin to influence the world around you. Science gave us the proof, spirituality gave us the meaning. And now, humanity stands at the bridge between both, learning not only to understand the observer effect but to live it. Because the moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim of chance, and start recognizing yourself as the observer shaping every moment, life begins to move differently. Events unfold with greater flow, synchronicities appear more often, and reality itself seems to listen. Not because you forced it, but because you finally remembered what you are, awareness looking back at itself through the eyes of creation. When we speak of the observer in spiritual terms, we move beyond science into something far more intimate, the experience of being aware of our own existence. The spiritual observer isn't a concept to memorize, it's an awakening to the silent presence that's always been watching your life unfold. It's that still point within you that never changes, even as your thoughts, emotions, and circumstances constantly shift. If you close your eyes right now, you'll sense it, the awareness that notices the rise and fall of your breath, the stream of thoughts passing by, the sensations in your body. That awareness is you. Not the person with a name, not the collection of memories, but the pure consciousness witnessing it all. Most people live their entire lives identified with the mind. They believe they are their thoughts, their opinions, their pain, and their past. But beneath that mental noise there's a deeper layer, the watcher. You felt it before. In moments of silence when the world fades for a second, and all that remains is awareness itself. That's the observer. And the spiritual journey is simply learning to live from that space more often. To shift from thinking you are the storm to realizing you are the sky that holds it. When you begin to watch your mind instead of being trapped inside it, something miraculous happens. Thoughts lose their control over you. Emotions that once felt overwhelming begin to dissolve. You start to see that every experience, joy, anger, fear, excitement, rises and falls like waves. None of it defines you. You are the ocean underneath, untouched and infinite. This realization is the gateway to inner freedom. The observer doesn't judge. It doesn't resist what is. It simply sees with compassion and neutrality. In that seeing, transformation happens naturally. For example, if you notice anger arising within you without labeling it as bad or wrong, that pure observation begins to dissolve the energy of anger. It's as though the light of awareness burns away distortion. You don't have to fight the emotion, you just have to witness it fully. This is why all great spiritual masters taught presence. Awareness is the ultimate healer. In daily life, the spiritual observer shows up in small yet profound ways. Imagine being in an argument, your ego wants to win, your emotions are flaring, but suddenly there's a moment of pause. You notice what's happening. That gap, that instant of awareness, is the observer awakening. The argument might still continue, but something in you is no longer fully lost in it. You're watching yourself experience the situation. That simple shift changes everything. It brings space into what was once automatic reaction. And within that space, wisdom arises. The more you cultivate this inner observer, the more your vibration changes. You begin to move from fear to trust, from chaos to calm. Why? Because awareness itself vibrates at the highest frequency of all, pure consciousness. When you identify with thoughts, your energy becomes dense and fragmented. When you rest as awareness, your energy becomes unified and radiant. This is also the moment where we begin to understand the spiritual mechanics of manifestation. You cannot consciously create from a state of identification. The ego tries to control outcomes, but it's like trying to rearrange waves on the surface of the ocean. The observer doesn't control, it aligns. When you step back into awareness, you access the creative intelligence that flows effortlessly through all things. You stop struggling to make things happen, and start allowing reality to unfold through resonance. Think of the universe as a mirror. When you're lost in your emotions, the mirror reflects confusion. When you rest in awareness, the mirror reflects clarity. It's not that reality suddenly changes, it's that your perception, your lens, your energetic signal shifts, and the reflection must follow. The observer doesn't need to shout or force. Its very presence changes the image in the mirror. Ancient mystics knew this. The Buddha called it mindfulness, the Upanishads called it the self, Jesus referred to it as the kingdom within. Different languages, same truth. They all pointed to the same realization. The observer and the divine are one and the same. The more you live as the observer, the more you begin to feel that connection with all life. The boundary between me and the world starts to blur. You begin to see that everything, the trees, the stars, the people you meet, are all expressions of the same consciousness looking back at itself. This awakening isn't always comfortable. As awareness expands, you start to see how much of your life has been driven by unconscious patterns, fears, desires, and beliefs you never questioned. The observer doesn't suppress these, it shines light on them. You start to witness your conditioning, the stories you tell yourself about who you are, what's possible, what you deserve. And in that gentle seeing, those old programs begin to dissolve. You stop living as the character and start realizing you are the author. To practice this, try something simple. Throughout your day, notice the watcher behind your thoughts. When you're walking, feel the awareness that notices each step. When you're talking to someone, observe yourself listening. When a difficult emotion arises, take a breath and just watch it, without resistance. That's the shift from identification to observation. And each time you do this, you reclaim your power. Eventually, life itself becomes a meditation. You realize that even when chaos swirls around you, there's a stillness inside that remains untouched. You begin to experience a deep sense of peace, not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer lost in the imperfection. You're awake within it. This awareness is the birthplace of transformation. When you realize that you are the observer, not the observed, you begin to consciously choose your vibration. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing happiness and start emanating it. From this higher perspective, you no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but instead, "What is this showing me about my energy, my focus, my state of being?" As this understanding deepens, the duality between me and life fades. The observer recognizes that there was never separation to begin with, only consciousness experiencing itself through infinite forms. You are not inside the universe is inside your consciousness. This realization changes how you see everything. You begin to approach life with reverence. Every conversation, every challenge, every sunrise becomes an opportunity to observe the divine expressing itself through form. You stop trying to escape the moment and instead allow it to reveal its sacredness. The spiritual observer lives in deep trust. It doesn't rush, it doesn't cling, it doesn't fear. It knows that everything arises and dissolves in the field of awareness, and that awareness itself is eternal. When you live from this understanding, even ordinary moments become holy. You can sit in silence, feel your own presence, and know that you are witnessing the universe through human eyes. You are not here to escape the human experience, but to observe it consciously. Because the moment you do, you realize that what you observe, your emotions, your relationships, your dreams, are not random. They are reflections of your inner frequency. And when that frequency aligns with love, compassion, and awareness, the entire outer world begins to echo that vibration back to you. This is the awakening of the spiritual observer, the shift from being lost in the dream to realizing you are the dreamer. From being the actor in the play to realizing you are also the stage, the light, and the audience. In that recognition, fear fades, clarity rises, and a quiet joy begins to fill your being. The old self, trapped in constant reaction, dissolves. The new self, calm and aware, begins to live through you. And from that state of awareness, creation becomes effortless, because you are no longer separate from the source that creates all things. Once you begin to recognize yourself as the observer, the consciousness behind all experiences, the next step is learning to use that awareness deliberately. This is where inner knowing becomes transformation. Understanding the observer effect intellectually is one thing, living it consciously is another. Reality responds not to what you say you want, but to the vibration of your awareness, the tone of your being. When you shift that tone, life cannot help but follow. Reality is not solid. It's fluid, flexible, and in constant dialogue with consciousness. Every second, it's being shaped by what you pay attention to and how you feel about it. The outer world is like a mirror, reflecting the energy of your inner world. Most people try to fix the reflection. They fight, push, or control, but the mirror only changes when you do. The secret is realizing that your perception is the brush painting every scene you live through. The first step in shifting reality is mindful observation. Most of us react unconsciously to situations, letting old emotions and patterns dictate how we respond. But when you bring awareness into the moment, you create space between stimulus and reaction. In that gap, transformation happens. For example, when anger rises, instead of becoming it, you watch it. You breathe. You let it move through without labeling or resisting. The act of observation itself begins to dissolve the energy. The vibration changes, and the situation that reflected that anger begins to shift too. Awareness doesn't need to fight energy, it transforms energy. When you watch something without judgment, it loses its power over you. This is how the observer reshapes reality, not by force but by presence. Another way to shift your vibration is through gratitude and emotional alignment. Gratitude isn't just positive thinking, it's vibrational coherence. When you focus on what you appreciate, even something as simple as sunlight or breath, you begin to align with abundance. That state of alignment changes your frequency immediately. And because reality mirrors frequency, you begin to attract more experiences that match that gratitude. The more you feel thankful, the more life gives you to be thankful for. Now let's move deeper into identity observation. Every reality you experience is anchored to an identity, a version of you observing from a specific vibration. If you want to experience a new reality, you must observe from the frequency of the self who already lives it. This is where the art of conscious identity shifting begins. Ask yourself, how does the version of me who already feels free, peaceful, or successful observe life? What thoughts does that version hold? What emotions does that version embody? When you begin to identify with that frequency, even before your physical world catches up, you start to collapse reality into alignment with it. You are literally tuning your consciousness to a new dimension of being. This is the essence of manifestation from awareness. You don't attract what you want, you become it. You tune into the energy of the desired state until it feels natural. The universe doesn't respond to what you say, it responds to what you are. The observer's vibration determines what version of the quantum field solidifies into form. But what about challenges? Pain, fear, uncertainty, these are not mistakes in your reality, they are mirrors. Each one shows you where your vibration is asking to evolve. When you stop resisting them and instead observe them consciously, they reveal their purpose. A financial struggle might be a mirror for scarcity consciousness. A recurring argument may reflect an unhealed emotional wound. Once you see it clearly, without judgment, you free the energy trapped within it. This is emotional alchemy, transforming dense vibration into clarity by the power of awareness. The key is practice. Each moment offers a choice: react from the old self or observe as the new one. At first, it takes effort to stay conscious. The mind wants to analyze, label, and control. But with time, observation becomes effortless, a natural way of being. You begin to notice that your reactions soften, your thoughts quiet, and your energy feels lighter. You become more like water, fluid, adaptable, responsive. And when that happens, reality starts to mirror your calmness. People treat you differently. Opportunities flow in without struggle. Things that once triggered you no longer have the same power. You begin to live from a higher vibration, and life organizes itself around that vibration with perfect precision. From this place, creation becomes effortless. You no longer try to manifest, you simply observe from the state of already having. You no longer chase love, you embody it. You no longer seek peace, you rest as it. This is the true meaning of conscious creation, not manipulating matter but mastering awareness. It's also important to understand that shifting reality isn't about escaping what is. It's about seeing what is through new eyes. When you stop judging your current circumstances as bad, you release resistance, and that release opens the door for change. Observation turns pain into insight, confusion into clarity, fear into wisdom. The outer world transforms because your relationship with it has changed. Over time, this practice of awareness builds momentum. The old self, shaped by fear and reaction, begins to dissolve. The new self, peaceful, powerful, and aligned, takes root. You begin to experience what mystics have always described: a feeling that life is unfolding perfectly, that you are both the observer and the flow itself. From this state, synchronicities multiply. You think of someone and they call. You wish for something softly and it arrives without struggle. This isn't coincidence, it's coherence. The observer's vibration and the field's vibration have synchronized. The deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. You never had to control life. You only had to become conscious of it. By observing with love, trust, and gratitude, you shift your frequency, and your frequency shifts everything. In the end, all spiritual practice leads here, to awareness. The art of observing without attachment, of living as consciousness rather than personality. When you live this way, you don't chase reality shifts, you are the shift. Every breath, every thought, every glance becomes a creative act. The universe doesn't just respond to you, it flows through you. This is the true power of the observer, the ability to reshape existence by simply being aware. Because when you see differently, you vibrate differently. And when you vibrate differently, the universe rearranges itself to reflect who you've become. Take a deep breath and feel the space within you, the quiet awareness that has been watching all along. That stillness is the real you, the observer behind every thought and emotion. You are not the story, not the struggle, but the consciousness witnessing it. The observer effect isn't just science. It's a reminder that life reflects your state of being. When you observe with fear, the world contracts. When you observe with love, it expands. Every moment is a mirror, waiting for your awareness to define it. You don't have to force change, you simply need to see differently. The power was never outside, it was always within the one who watches. So as you move forward, stay present. Watch your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, gently, without judgment. Let awareness be your guide. Because when you live as the observer, you stop chasing miracles and start realizing you are one.